For 20 years, I've been raising a daughter who's not related to me by blood. In essence, she is my stepdaughter. Blood relation doesn't matter, she's like my real daughter. That's what I was thinking, but I never expected such a thing to happen. If you're going to be like that, then I have my own thoughts too. This is the story of the unforgettable pseudo family. My name is Diane. I'm 50 years old. I've been married to my husband Tom for 20 years. This is my first marriage, but for Tom, it's his second. Furthermore, Tom had a daughter. Her name is Sally. When I married him, she was only 9 years old. Initially, I didn't know he had a child. As we continued to date, he told me about his past divorce and that he has a daughter in elementary school. However, by the time he told me all this, I was already drawn to him. It seems he also had feelings for me, and after about 6 months since we met, he formally asked me to be his girlfriend. That being said, at first, I couldn't wholeheartedly be happy about this relationship. The man I fell in love with had been divorced with a child. If we were to get married, would I really be happy? Such worries were swirling around in my head. After much consideration, I decided to go out with him. Eventually, I began to see his daughter, Sally, more often, and she started to become attached to me. One day during a meal, Sally muttered,
"It would be nice if Diane could become my mom."
I was taken aback by her words. As if he had been waiting for his daughter's words, Tom excitedly responded,
"Actually, I've been thinking the same thing. Diane, would you like to become a real family with us?"
Tom expressed his feelings directly to me. I can make it work with this family. I gratefully accepted their feelings, and thus we officially became a family. Right after we got married, it was really blissful. My daughter, who eats the food I make every day and tells me it's delicious. On holidays, my husband would take me and our daughter out. The more I spent time with them, the deeper I felt our family bond grew. Of course, there were times when we clashed, but that's just part of being a family. I was glad I married my husband. That's what I thought. The attitude of my husband and daughter became cold around the 10th year of our marriage. One evening, when I came home after finishing some errands, the house was pitch dark. At this time, my husband and daughter should have been waiting for me, and we should be sitting around the dinner table. Did something happen to the two of them? Feeling uneasy, I immediately called my husband and daughter. The phone is ringing, but for some reason, neither of them is picking up. What should I do? If something happened to the two of them, should I report it to the police? Ignoring my worries, I heard the front door open. Hearing the voices of my husband and daughter, I quickly headed towards the entrance. There they were, my husband and daughter, laughing happily together. Oh, thank goodness! I was worried because neither of you had contacted me. Ignoring my concerns, my daughter coolly replied, "Oh, you're back. Just glad you're both safe. I'll get dinner started. Let's eat together." "I've already eaten with Dad. No thanks. You can eat alone? Haha." Huh? They ate together? Without telling me? That's never happened before. So that's what happened? A heads up would have been nice. Perhaps my words struck a nerve because my husband suddenly started shouting.
"Why do we have to report everything to you? What Sally and I do is none of your business."
What? Tom? I'd never seen this side of him before. We'd had minor arguments before, but I'd never seen him lose his temper like that. Haha, this woman is scared of Dad. Hilarious, haha. My husband was on board with my daughter's ridicule.
"She's overstepping her boundaries as a stepmother. She's not even part of our real family."
Haha, that's right. The only one related by blood in this house is Dad. The sudden change in my husband and daughter left me reeling. Why? Why am I being treated this way all of a sudden? Until recently, we were a happy family, living peacefully together. What happened to you two? Did I do something wrong? But their response was beyond unreasonable. Something wrong? It's you. You are the problem itself, isn't it? Haha, right, Dad?
Yeah, that's right. The way she parades around, acting like a good mother, is especially infuriating.
I get it. It's so annoying when she tries to act like a good mother, haha.
Is this for real?
To be insulted so thoroughly by the two people I considered my family. That day, I lost my appetite. After taking a bath, I went straight to bed. But my husband said sleeping in the same room was uncomfortable, and I ended up sleeping on the living room couch. From that day forward, my husband and daughter's attitudes got worse and worse. They got colder and colder by the day. If they were just cold, that would be one thing. But what hurt me the most was seeing them laugh while speaking ill of me. Dad, how long are we keeping her around? Haha.
Well, as long as she's here, we won't have to worry about housework. I guess we can keep her until we get bored, haha.
Ew, seriously? Dad, you're way too kind, haha. As if I were the villain, the two of them disparaged me without end. At first, I didn't understand why I was being treated this way. But after a while, I began to grasp the truth. One evening, I overheard my daughter talking on the phone with someone. Yeah, it's okay. We're about to kick her out. Kick out? Me? Trying not to be noticed by my daughter, I quietly listened in. So, when are you coming back? Dad can't wait. Living together is so much better when my real mom is around. It seems the person on the phone is my husband's ex-wife, which means she's Sally's biological mother. That's when the penny dropped. My husband and daughter must have started secretly meeting with her biological mom, and their affection seems to be leaning towards her. I've been compared to her, and now I feel like they've branded me as the inferior one. That's why they suddenly become so cold towards me. If their biological mother is coming back into the picture, I guess I'll eventually have to leave. Of course, I thought about getting a divorce right away. But realistically, I've been a stay-at-home mom. With all the money going to Sally's college, the little bit that comes my way is peanuts. There's no way I could get a divorce and move out right now. I thought about getting a part-time job, but it would be a hassle if my husband found out. I tried some work-from-home gigs, but let's be real, it wasn't much, just a few $100. There's no way I can save up for moving with that. My husband and daughter's cold behavior hasn't changed. Maybe I've built up a tolerance because it doesn't get to me as much, but living with people who probably can't stand me is just like living in hell. Then one day, Sally spoke to me, which was rare. Hey, I'm getting married. What? Married? Sally was 29. She could get married anytime. Apparently, she's marrying the heir of the company where she works as a receptionist, and he's set to take over his father's business. I didn't know about this, but I was genuinely happy that she told me about her marriage. Oh, that's wonderful! Congratulations! Thanks, haha. The wedding's in a month. Expecting a generous gift from you. Ah, I see. She's after a gift. Though I had mixed emotions, she's my daughter that I've raised for 20 years. It's a big deal for me too. I'll make a decision about the divorce after attending her wedding. As I was thinking, Sally continued. Oh, and don't get it wrong, you are not invited to the wedding. What? But you just said about the gift? Are you dense? I meant wire it on that day, haha. No way I'd invite you. But I'm inviting my real mother. She's making it big in the beauty salon business. She owns multiple chains nationwide and is like this successful businesswoman. A businesswoman? Yeah, having her at the wedding looks good, and I'm sure she'll give a big gift. Dad is saying he wants to get back with her. Your father? Yes, seriously, what's the point of keeping a housewife? You are dumped, haha. So basically, because his ex-wife, her biological mother, is successful, they want to ditch me, a housewife. But I couldn't believe that I wouldn't even be invited to my daughter's wedding. As I stood there stunned, Sally berated me. Don't you dare show up at my wedding, you fake mother. My husband, watching all this, calmly added with a smug grin.
Hey, why are you surprised? It's obvious you are like a fake family member. Plus, as Sally said, I want to get back with my ex. She's doing way better, haha.
At that moment, all the pent-up anger and frustration came flooding out. Is that so? That's how it is, huh? For these past 20 years, I've tried my best to build a good family relationship. And for what? If you're gonna play that game, I have my own thoughts too. Alright then, I won't be coming to the wedding. I told my daughter and husband so, then headed to a certain place. Then, a month later, on the day of my daughter's wedding, I did as they told me, not attending the wedding, but instead making preparations to move out. I had already informed my husband and daughter of my plans to leave on that day, and I had a signed divorce agreement from my husband. All that was left was to wait for their move. As I diligently packed my things, my daughter called at the exact moment I anticipated. Hello? Mom, where are you right now? Get to the venue immediately. Right off the bat, my daughter was pleading for my help. The venue? What are you talking about? Weren't you the one who told me not to come? Please, just come. If you don't, the ceremony will have to be canceled. My daughter panicking and sobbing on the other end of the line. Ah yes, this was all part of my plan. Mom, are you listening? They're saying they'll call off the engagement if you don't show up. To my desperate daughter, I replied coolly, Is that so? It's largely thanks to me that your boyfriend decided to marry you in the first place. Huh? What do you mean? At my words, my daughter was in full-blown panic mode. To my confused daughter, Sally, I revealed the truth. You see, I've actually met your fiancé before. Or rather, he came to meet me. Apparently, he had been investigating our family. He investigated us? For what? He told you he was the heir to your company, right? Of course he would be cautious about choosing his marriage partner. His father hired a private detective to investigate us. After hearing about the marriage for my daughter, I immediately visited a law firm. Of course it was to proceed with the divorce in my favor. On my way back, I was approached by a man who claimed to be my daughter's fiancé. He told me that his father was investigating our family and had discovered that my daughter and my husband were regularly meeting with my husband's ex-wife. He wondered why my husband and daughter seemed to be having a good time with the ex-wife while I was there. So he decided to meet me and hear my side of the story. Of course, I told him everything. How the ex-wife is now a successful businesswoman, and my husband and daughter are planning to jump ship to her for money and connections. How they're trying to drive me out of the house because I'm in the way. Liar! That really happened? Did you talk badly about me to him? I merely stated the facts. You have been abusing and mistreating me for quite some time. Why would you do such a thing? It's unnecessary. Unnecessary? Isn't it rather your own fault that this is happening? You are the one who did the wrongdoings. When I pushed back, my daughter fell silent, unable to retort. But I'm not a monster. I've raised you as my daughter for 20 years, and I genuinely wanted you to be happy. So I made a suggestion to him.
A suggestion?
Yes, if my daughter invites me to her wedding, I want him to marry her as planned.
Huh?
Surprisingly, even after I told him everything, he didn't completely give up on my daughter. He admitted that he truly loved her and still wanted to marry her. However, he said he felt uncomfortable to marry someone who couldn't even appreciate the person who raised her. So I pleaded with him. If Sally, at the very last moment, chose to invite me to her wedding, please accept her. But she squandered even that chance. Far from it, she treated me like a nuisance right until the end, alongside my husband, even calling us a fake family.
Mom, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I won't say cruel things anymore.
Hey, Diane, is what you just said true? If so, please help Sally out.
My husband must have heard from our daughter, for he too was crying and pleading over the phone. Naturally, I have no intention of forgiving them. The two of them are the ones who trampled on their last chance. It's far too convenient to ask for forgiveness now. You forgot the kindness of being raised for 20 years and quickly switched allegiance to your successful ex-wife and real mother. I will never forgive you two. Never. I declared so and then hung up the phone. I blocked their numbers one after another, picked up my bags, and headed to the apartment I had already rented. On the way, I didn't forget to submit the divorce papers at the town hall. Even if I were to be invited to my daughter's wedding, I had decided in my heart to divorce my husband. No way I could stay with them after suffering from all the constant verbal abuse from them. Later, I heard from my daughter's fiancé that my daughter and husband had even begged for marriage, crying. But once the truth came out, it was too late. The marriage proposal was utterly broken off. As a result, my daughter quit her job and became a recluse, and my husband is now apparently busy caring for her mental health. It must have caused quite a bit of trouble on her fiancé's side. I wanted to apologize and I contacted him. To me, he gave kind words. It's okay. It's just that Sally and her dad turned out to be disappointing. Rather, I'm glad I realized it before I married her. I owe you, ma'am. Thank you. If Sally could have married such a sincere person, she would have been happy. While I do feel a bit sad thinking about it, I don't regret it. Because I'm free now, I would like to pursue my own happiness and enjoy the rest of my life. My name is Nancy, and I'm 48 years old. Several years ago, I moved into my husband's parents' house to care for my mother-in-law, who has been diagnosed with dementia.
Nancy, do you know where my socks are? I want to go for a walk, but I can't seem to find them.
Mom, by any chance, have you been wearing 2 on your right foot?
Oh my, indeed I have. No wonder it felt strange to walk.
Living with her since she was diagnosed with dementia, her symptoms are still mild, so she just occasionally needs help with everyday tasks. Haha, but having 2 pairs of socks on must have kept your feet warm, right? That's not so bad.
I suppose you're right.
I hear that some people become quite irritable when they develop dementia, but my mother-in-law seems somewhat fluffy, like a little girl. The stress of caregiving is likely less for me compared to others. All right, all fixed. Shall we go for a walk together? After correcting her socks, we set out for our daily walk. Even though her symptoms are mild, she can't go out alone. Switching to working from home and caring for my mother-in-law can lead to unexpected actions and demands on my time, but this slow-paced life of walking outside every day is peaceful. By the way, I haven't seen Jack around. If he's getting into trouble outside, I'll scold him, you know. At dinner, my mother-in-law spoke.
Jack will be back tomorrow. His business trip was a long one this time. Oh, he was on a business trip? I thought he was out gallivanting around again. She looked slightly disappointed, and I gave a bitter smile. Were you planning on scolding him? Well, my husband Jack isn't a bad guy, but he can be a bit loose about certain things. When he gets immersed in his work or hobbies, he loses track of time, and he's also loose about money. Unless I give him his allowance in increments, he will spend it all at once. Whenever my husband caused trouble, my mother-in-law would scold him for me. My mother-in-law, who was originally in a logical field, had a way of logically cornering my husband until he was speechless, which always amused me to see. Surely, compared to the typical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, my mother-in-law and I must have a quite good living arrangement. Still, as my mother-in-law pointed out, my husband has increasingly been absent from home lately. I cut back on my work and my income decreased, so he said he'd work harder, but for me, it's a bit complicated. That's because the decrease in income is offset by moving into my mother-in-law's house and reducing housing-related expenses, so it's more or less a wash. What I really want is for my husband to value his family more and to come home early. Especially in these last 3 months, he's been coming home late and going on business trips more frequently, which has been concerning. That's how things are as my husband returns from his business trip. As always, I was tidying up my husband Jack's laundry from his business trip when I found an unfamiliar undershirt in his bag. Hey, what's with this undershirt?
Huh?
Despite my lighthearted question, Jack showed a startled reaction. It was in your bag. It's not something I usually buy, so I was wondering what happened.
Ah, that. I bought it myself. The one I had was old, right? It got torn, so I threw it away.
Huh? I packed all new ones when you left. Did it really tear?
Did it? Maybe it was just poorly made.
Oh, I see. My husband's strange behavior made me suspicious. Lily, don't you think this is odd? I speak to the stray cat, Lily. Lily is a calico stray that my mother-in-law dotes on, and she has become quite affectionate towards me as well. Well, even when I talk to her, she can only reply with meow. After that, when I looked closer, there was a faint smell of perfume from the suitcase. Could he be cheating? As I stroke Lily's belly, she returns the favor with her soft paws. Are you trying to comfort me? Meow. Then let's investigate. What? Mother-in-law, you were listening? If something seems strange, you must act immediately. Don't worry, Jack is sloppy. He can't hide anything. There should be evidence left. My mother-in-law chuckles. Mother-in-law, aren't you assuming he's cheating? Well, I retorted, I started investigating my husband. Of course it was to prove Jack's innocence. But, seeing the report from the investigation, I couldn't believe my own eyes. As Jack came home late from his business trip, he lay down on the sofa, exhausted. I softly broke the silence. There's something important we need to discuss. Perhaps sensing my determination, my husband also got up and resettled himself on the sofa. Do you have something you need to tell me?
What?
Watching my visibly flustered husband, I sighed internally.
Do you have something you need to say? What? Nancy, what's going on?
Do you have something you need to say? Like my mother-in-law used to question my husband, I fixed my gaze on him. After a moment, my husband hung his head.
Well, I'm sorry. The business trip was half a lie.
As he said this, he remained hunched over, unable to utter a word more. Who were you meeting? Where did you go?
Well, Nancy, you see.
The more I pressed, the more my husband began to perspire, his eyes darting around the room nervously. So, you're not denying that you met someone and went somewhere?
Well, about that.
Watching my husband wince, I felt as if a weight had been placed on my chest. Do you love your child?
What? Nancy, why?
My husband turned pale in a flash. Do you remember when I asked you about the underwear? After that, I noticed a perfume scent from your bag, and I started to investigate you. I showed my husband the investigation report with a picture of his mistress and their child, all smiles.
I only had a thing with her once, years ago when we were both drunk. As soon as I found out she was married, I cut off all contact.
Opening the floodgates, my husband started to spill everything out.
But a few months ago, she suddenly showed up and told me she was divorced, raising the kid by herself and struggling. She wanted to talk to me. As we drank and talked, we somehow ended up back together. But I refused when she asked me to divorce you and remarry her. I refused.
While making his excuses, my husband occasionally cast nervous glances my way.
Then she said, the kid is mine. I denied it because we only slept together that one time years ago, but she insisted on a DNA test. And when we did it, it turned out the kid really is mine. And she divorced her ex-husband because the kid wasn't his. The child was happy to meet their real dad, and well...
After rushing through his explanation, my husband stammered and faltered. What are you planning to do from now on?
Huh? Oh, well...
Seeing my husband flustered, I let out another sigh and sighed my heart.
Do you think everything would have been fine if I hadn't found out? Answer me. You know I've been handling the bank account where your salary gets deposited, right? I wondered why the amount didn't increase much even when you came home late claiming overtime and business trips. Then there's the underwear and the perfume. Didn't you think I would get suspicious? Anyway, if this young girl is indeed your child, we need to consider our future. Let's have another talk in a week. Please think it over. However, on the weekend, 5 days later, something unbelievable happened.
Nancy!
Rushing over at my mother-in-law's call, I saw that she was holding divorce papers and a letter addressed to me in her hand. My husband's section of the divorce papers was already filled out, complete with his signature. And inside the envelope, there was a letter. To Nancy. After giving it a lot of thought, I've decided to leave this house. Now I need to prioritize the future of my child. I can't just leave her struggling with her life. Even though I wasn't planning on having a child, the affection grew when she became attached to me. Please grant me a divorce. I've decided to start a new life with my new family. Also to fulfill my duties as a father. I'm leaving you in my mom's care. I believe that you two get along well, and I can entrust her to you with peace of mind. Take care, Jack. Shall we talk? My mother-in-law gently rubs my back as I cried out in distress. After hearing the story and reading the letter, she hugs me tightly. Even though he's my son, I can't forgive Jack. I'm not satisfied until he pays for what he's done. But what do you think, Nancy? Depending on your decision, I'm willing to lend my full support. I'm prepared to push him to the wall, so don't hesitate to tell me what you want. The sight of my mother-in-law, filled with a rage that left me breathless, was something I had never seen before. Even though she had scolded my husband several times before, her anger now was beyond comparison. Looking at her face, a change gradually came over me. Mother-in-law, I was wrong. Thinking I should prioritize the kids or try to understand Jack's feelings, I've been behaving as if I was detached from all of this. That's wrong, isn't it? I haven't expressed my feelings to Jack at all, and Jack didn't mention me even once in his letter. It's like I was just a household helper. That's unacceptable. I'll definitely get my revenge. Bubbling anger swelled within me. Then, together with my mother-in-law, we began to plan. We're going to wreck him. The next payday, while I was having dinner with my mother-in-law, we heard a disturbing noise at the front door. He's here. As my mother-in-law chuckled, the doorbell rang. Who might this be? When I responded frostily, Jack looked taken aback on the other side of the screen, yet demanded the door be opened. Oh, you're giving up already, after leaving your wife and mother behind not even 2 weeks past? My mother-in-law chimed in with a mischievous tone. This is not about giving up. Give me back my salary, Jack demanded in a panicked voice. Why? You took your bank book and seal with you, didn't you? Don't you have others? The reason for Jack's desperation was that my mother-in-law and I had his salary account changed at his company. Let's take away his salary. At first, I thought it was impossible. I thought she's really losing her memory.
but my mother-in-law just laughed lightly. There's no way they can deposit the salary that's supposed to go to Jack's account into someone else's account. But if it goes into an account in Jack's name, that'll work.
Huh?
My mother-in-law made a call to Jack's company. Hello, boss. It's been a while. I appreciate you looking after Jack. Today, I'd like to discuss something. The boss of Jack's company is an old friend who admires my in-laws as benefactors. When my mother-in-law proposed her plan, the boss happily agreed. Your salary has been properly deposited into your account. I happen to have an account under your name. I just didn't mention it. Only because of the relationship between my mother-in-law and the boss, this strategy could work. Once the boss understood the circumstances, he agreed to deposit Jack's salary into an account under Jack's name that my mother-in-law had been holding to save money for her child.
That's my money.
Yes, the fruits of your labor. And since Nancy is your wife, you must provide her with some of your earnings.
What?
My husband's face registered shock at my mother-in-law's words. Jack, I still have the divorce papers here. They're neither signed nor submitted, so we're still married.
What?
Honestly, I was tempted to just get it over with and file for divorce immediately. However, as my mother-in-law strategized, I decided it was in our best interest to maintain our marital status, so I kept the divorce papers. If you really wanted to divorce, you should have ensured it was filed, not just left behind. Good job. With that, I hung up the intercom and set it to silent mode. Of course, I had also swapped the keys to the front door and ensured that the chain was securely fastened. The security of the house was foolproof, and the security cameras I had installed in various places were working fine, as I could confirm on the monitor. My husband tried for a while to find a way in, but eventually gave up and went home. You can use the money however you want. No, I think I'll refrain from that. My mother-in-law offered me my husband's checkbook, but I had no intention of using it. While I was entitled to a portion of my husband's earnings for marital expenses, I could manage my living expenses with my salary. I did accept the checkbook, but I simply tucked it away in a drawer. A few days later, my husband showed up at the house again. This time, we had summoned him. He was accompanied by his mistress and their child.
The boss? And who?
This is a DNA testing expert. They offer on-site service, so we requested it. My smile seemed to irritate my husband.
I told you the results are out.
But I neither witnessed the initial procedure, nor have I seen the written results. My firm refusal to accept any arguments made my husband reluctantly agree to take the test. You don't seem too enthusiastic. Are you afraid of what the test might reveal? That's fine, we don't mind either way. But remember what we discussed? If you agree to our condition, we'll restore your salary to its original account and fill out the divorce papers. Our condition is that this DNA test will reveal the relationship between the three of you. We ask the boss here to be a witness.
Just get it over with. Examine whatever you want if it'll make you happy.
My husband heaved a big sigh and encouraged the testers to proceed, but his mistress was behaving quite the opposite.
Oh, are you leaving?
She backpedaled slowly, roughly pulling her child by the hand and turning to leave without a word.
Huh?
That was Jack, dumbstruck by the flight of his affair partner. The act was proof of the partner's lies, but we did not ease up in our pursuit. In response to the dumbfounded Jack, my mother-in-law said something profound. You know, if it were me, I'd at least get the test done, collect some immediate cash, and then make arrangements to flee while waiting for the results. Not too bright, is he? Seeing her laugh like that, I was secretly terrified. Whether she had dementia or not, I knew I couldn't make an enemy of this woman.
But the child, it's mine.
Jack stuttered. The specimen, are you sure it was really yours? I added, casually flashing an additional investigation report. It seems your lover is quite popular. She spun similar tales for all the men she's been with during her pregnancy period. But it seems there's one main guy, a jobless she's known since college days. It seems like he might be the real father.
That's a lie.
Why not check it out for yourself? The address is right there in the document. After a hard glare in my direction, Jack snatched the report from my hands and rushed out the door. Unbelievable. My mother-in-law sighed, shrugging her shoulders as we apologized and thanked the president and the contractor for their efforts. The president declined our token of gratitude, instead leaving us a get-well gift, and the contractor agreed to take the previously discussed payment. Soon after, Jack was back, frantically ringing our doorbell. We just looked at each other and gave a resigned chuckle.
The child isn't mine, and all the money left in the bank account has been withdrawn without my knowledge.
The porch light illuminated Jack, his head bowed in disappointment, like a spotlight highlighting a solo actor on a stage. Seeing this, I couldn't help but share a covert laugh with my mother-in-law. "So, what brings you here?" she managed to ask, stifling her laughter.
Huh? What do you mean, what brings me here?
Like a small child, Jack murmured, but my mother-in-law was relentless. "This is the house of the wife and mother you abandoned. You left on your own accord. You have no right to cross this threshold, do you think?"
Mom?
Mom? Who are you talking about? I have a lovely daughter who has taken it upon herself to care for me in my old age, even with the burden of my dementia, so I can't possibly have a son who would leave his own mother in the lurch like you did.
Tears welled up in Jack's eyes at her harsh words, while on the contrary, I felt a surge of happiness at being called her lovely daughter.
Please take the envelope in the mailbox. It contains enough money for your immediate expenses. Be careful not to spend it all at once, or you won't last till your next payday. From next month onwards, your salary will be deposited into your old account.
Nancy, you are the only one for me. If you still have feelings for me, we can start over, right? Jack's face lit up with hope, but I held no such feelings for him.
That envelope is my final act of consideration for you. I'll be filing for divorce soon, so we are strangers from now on. Farewell.
Wait, please, I'm sorry. I swear I'll never do anything like this again. Please, just this once. Forgive.
Jack's plea was cut short with a sharp "no" from my mother-in-law. Following this, we sold our house and moved out. My mother-in-law had arranged for me to be her legal guardian before her dementia set in, so we were able to sell the house. Once again, I was astounded by her foresight and couldn't help but admire her. Moreover, we moved to a residential care facility. I live in a place close by, which is reassuring. I can see her every day. I have also been able to return to work full-time. After settling down and sorting out the property matters, I filed for divorce and demanded alimony from Jack. My mother-in-law instructed the lawyer to take everything in Jack's bank account. He had no choice but to comply. It's sad that we are not relatives, but I hope we can continue to be close. And that's what I intend for us to be.
My name is Layla. I'm 28 years old. I have been married to my college sweetheart Henry for almost 3 years now. For the first 2 years of our marriage, we were both working, but I'm currently on a leave of absence. This story started 2 years ago when I went to my husband's parents' home for the first time to formally greet them as their son's wife. At that time, my sister-in-law was still living at home, and for some reason, she insisted on being present during my visit. I initially appreciated her presence since I knew I would have to meet her eventually, and it was convenient to get the introductions done, all at once. The conversation with my future in-laws went smoothly, but all of a sudden, "I hate living with strangers. Even though you're Henry's wife, you're still a stranger to me, so don't ever consider living here," so my sister-in-law declared. We had been searching for a home somewhere between our workplaces and never had any intentions of moving in with them, so her words left me stunned. Also, my parents are very nice people, but don't think you can take advantage of them. When you have kids and decide to go back to work, don't expect them to babysit, and don't visit this house too often. She continued. Her words felt like an unwarranted attack, especially considering my husband and in-laws were present. They immediately reprimanded her and apologized to me so profusely that it was as if they were ready to get down on their knees. Seeing them apologize only seemed to fuel her anger, and she continued to rant, bringing up issues we had never even considered. It was way too ridiculous, and it turned my initial shock into a calm astonishment. If you feel that way, it would be better to call off our marriage. I said firmly, and then left, though my husband and his parents kept apologizing to me. Later, a meeting was arranged that included both sets of parents, my husband, my sister-in-law, and myself. However, my sister-in-law's hostile attitude toward me didn't change at all. Realizing this situation was not good for anyone, my in-laws decided it was best for her to move out. She had a job and earned enough to live independently, so she was essentially asked to leave her parents' home. Her new place was close to her workplace, in an area I had no connection with. My husband and his parents seemed to make an effort to avoid running into her, even at their home. She was conspicuously absent from our wedding, feigning illness. Since then, we never saw her face to face, so I could hardly remember what she looked like. I thought our relationship would continue like this, but she got engaged, which was an unexpected development. As it turns out, her fiancé was one of my father's employees. My father works for a fairly large company and has many subordinates, so I guess this sort of coincidence isn't impossible. I wish it hadn't happened. My sister-in-law was nearing 35 and had been eagerly marriage hunting. She finally caught a younger, good-looking, high-profile man, and it seemed to have sent her into a frenzy. Despite her previous hostility towards me, she started contacting me so frequently. She said things like, "We're close sisters, right? I've always cherished you as a sister." I had never had a decent conversation with her, let alone been close. But as I tried to respond vaguely to avoid confrontation, she took it as a sign that she was on the right track and started contacting me even more often. "We've always been close, and let's continue to be close. Can I visit your parents' house with my fiancé? I want to get along with your family too," so she said. When I received a call from my sister-in-law, I recorded it and let my husband listen. "What the heck is she saying? That rotten sister of mine," he said, thoroughly exasperated. He informed his parents about the situation since things might have gotten heated if I said it. Just as we were, my father-in-law was also thoroughly exasperated. "After all the rude things you've said, what is this nonsense you're spewing now? If you think about what you've done calmly, you wouldn't be able to make such calls." He said this to his daughter. Thanks to his intervention, I stopped receiving direct calls from my sister-in-law. However, in exchange, she sent me a thick letter. I wonder how she took her parents' anger. The letter was filled with unnecessary phrases like, "We are close sisters. I'm glad you married Henry. I absolutely want you to come to my wedding," with nothing else mentioned. She even included a folded pamphlet of her wedding venue, with a sticky note that said, "It's more luxurious than where you guys had your wedding, so please enjoy it." She didn't have to do all this, as I was already planning to attend her wedding. I was gonna respond to the invitation, saying that I'd be present. I'd congratulate anyone who's getting married, regardless of who they are. I wouldn't want to do anything as shameful as what my sister-in-law did 2 years ago. I'm an adult with common sense. However, my attendance was just a plan. By the time of my sister-in-law's wedding, I'd be close to my due date, so I couldn't predict how things will go. It might end up with just my husband attending, without me. My in-laws had kindly told me not to overexert myself, and I planned to take their advice. After all, I was on maternity leave, and my sister-in-law should know this from my in-laws. Also, it seemed that my father received an invitation from the groom's side, as he was considered a superior. He said, "I'm not his direct boss, but it's not that I'm totally unrelated. And he's the man marrying Henry's sister. I intend to go, but I decline to give a speech. And there's the issue with the sister. You don't need to attend," he said to my mother with a slightly troubled tone. According to my mom, the groom had asked my dad to give a speech at the wedding reception. My father is in an executive position. The groom, at 30 years old, hadn't even managed to become a team leader yet, so he was in no position to even send an invitation to my father, let alone ask him to give a speech. Around the office, people seemed to talk about him like quite audacious. and some nerve. According to what I heard from my in-laws, my sister-in-law had egged on her fiancé, saying, "He's not just a boss, but a family. Since he's the father of my brother's wife, you don't need to hesitate. If we could get him to give a speech for us, it's a fast-tracked promotion for you. You can one-up the other employees by having an executive in the family." She seemed to have pushed her fiancé into this, and I couldn't help but worry about his future, though I'd never met him before. Workplace relationships and hierarchies aren't as simple as she thinks. She was the type of person who thought her values and opinions were justice, and if you were not the type of person who could firmly say no, you might be swayed by her. Before my sister-in-law's wedding, we had a discussion with my in-laws, and we decided that my husband would attend without me, and from my family, only my father would attend. My sister-in-law seemed very unsatisfied, but perhaps fearing that insisting on her opinion would result in neither my husband nor my father attending, she reluctantly agreed. And then came the day of the wedding. I was staying at my parents' house to prepare for my delivery, and my mother, who had also decided not to attend my sister-in-law's wedding, was taking care of me, as my labor could begin at any moment. We hadn't particularly talked about it, but I imagined her reception must have started about then. As I was relaxing and sipping my tea, my smartphone rang. It was from my sister-in-law. I wonder, isn't she in the middle of her reception? As I answered the call, "Why aren't you and your mother at the ceremony? It's utterly rude that you said you'd attend and then not show up." A hysterical voice ranted. "Hold on, we had agreed that we wouldn't attend, didn't we?" I retorted. "How dare you, as a sister-in-law, not do as your husband's sister says? You're basically a servant to the family you've married into, so what gives? It's bizarre how my parents and Henry are so compliant with you, and now my fiancé is in a bad mood because of it." My response only fueled her rage. Her ranting continued, and I managed to stop myself from saying I couldn't care less. I moved the phone away from my ear and listened to her tirade. My mother wore a puzzled expression, hearing the voice leaking from my phone. It appeared she had called during a break in the reception, and after a while, my sister declared, "I don't have much time right now, but you'll have to take responsibility for not attending the ceremony," and then hung up. Despite us informing her beforehand that we wouldn't be attending, she had the audacity to tell us to take responsibility. This perplexing statement wasn't the cause, but shortly after this call, my labor started. My mother grabbed the prepared bag for the hospital, called a taxi, and contacted my husband while we headed to the hospital. My mother was an ex-midwife, and she knew what to do. "The baby won't be born immediately, so you can come to the hospital after the reception. You'll have plenty of time." She even instructed my evidently flustered husband over the phone. After hanging up with my husband, my mother said, "It'd be a hassle later on if Henry also had to leave the reception early, right?" With a mischievous smile. The delivery took longer than anticipated, lasting close to half a day, even after my husband, in-laws, and my father arrived. Our first child, a girl, was born at dawn. Exhausted and disheveled, I heard my husband say, crying like a child, "Thank you. What a beautiful baby girl. Let's cherish her to grow up, kind and thoughtful." My in-laws and parents were all overjoyed. I only heard about the aftermath of my sister-in-law's wedding and reception once I had settled down at home after I got back from the hospital with my daughter in my arms. It seemed it was quite a serious event. This serious has a negative connotation. Despite having discussed everything meticulously beforehand, my sister-in-law had assumed, in her wedding-high mind, that her brother and his wife, as well as his in-laws, would surely attend the wedding ceremony. It appeared she hadn't informed her fiancé about the decisions made in the family discussion, and also assured him, "Henry's father-in-law will accept to give a speech, so it's all good." My father had personally declined to the groom, suggesting that he should ask someone else instead. The groom had even proposed asking his direct superior, or an uncle. I'm sure he will accept it if I ask through my brother's wife. I had no idea how she had convinced the groom that my father wouldn't accept to give a speech, while he had directly declined it to him. It was reiterated in front of my sister-in-law during the family discussion that he wouldn't do it, and yet no alternative prearrangements had been made. Because of my sister-in-law's actions, the ceremony and reception proceeded without a main speaker. The groom, who was supposedly overjoyed that an executive had accepted to give a speech on his wedding, was indeed thunderstruck. I assume he felt utterly embarrassed in front of the invited guests. Just picturing the bride and groom seating in shock makes my spine chill, even though I wasn't there. Naturally, the groom must have been upset and confused. He probably complained to my sister-in-law too. The ever-deteriorating atmosphere at the venue caused my anxious sister-in-law to call me during the break to change her dress. The groom gradually noticed more lies by observing the guests invited by my sister-in-law, and after the reception that was filled with tense mood, he suggested postponing their still uncompleted legal marriage registration. The lies my sister-in-law told her fiancé included: I have a great relationship with my family. I am very close to my brother and his wife. That's why your boss, who is my brother's father-in-law, will support you. I graduated from a prestigious university and have a responsible job at a major company. I am a happy person, still surrounded by the good friends I made at the university. And so on. As you might guess, all of these were lies. My sister-in-law had been increasingly alienated within the family, even before she started spewing offensive remarks at me, and her relationship with her brother, my husband, was far from good. It goes without saying that my relationship with her was not good either, so there was no reason my father would favor my sister-in-law's fiancé. As I'd mentioned before, the groom didn't seem very competent at his job, so promoting him out of nowhere would indeed create an odd atmosphere within the company. Additionally, my sister-in-law's highest education level is high school. After graduating by the skin of her teeth as she was partying around without attending school properly, she was in a state of unemployment, occasionally doing some part-time work. After her 30s, she was hired as a part-time employee through the connections of her father. And of course, she has never had a responsible job. Even though she managed to commute without being late or absent, she was a burden who could not handle phone calls, making copies, or checking emails properly. There's no way such a person would have friends. Even if there were some acquaintances when she came across in town, they were not someone close enough to invite to the wedding, so she used a dispatch service to fill the seats. Thus, the speeches made by such so-called friends sounded obviously fake. At a ceremony to celebrate a new beginning, it was unlikely that there would be any reconciliation between my sister-in-law and her fiancé, after so many lies and secrets had been exposed, no matter how hard she tried. Currently, it seems that discussions with the lawyers are still ongoing. After hearing all of this, I remembered the words my husband had said when our daughter was born. Let's cherish her to grow up, kind and thoughtful. Now I realize these words had a very deep meaning. Neither I nor my parents have any intention of getting involved in whatever resolution my sister-in-law comes to. Even my father-in-law said firmly, "That's fine. I don't want any weird influences on my granddaughter, so I'd rather you don't get involved." I know it's not easy to live without any lies or secrets, and there are gentle lies made in care for one another. I believe they work fine as long as they are based on proper common sense. Come to think of all the things my sister-in-law had said and done, I even take them as a great lesson to learn what not to do. That's how I deeply feel now. My husband and I are about to start raising our first child. We are discussing that we want to cherish and nurture her so she can grow up to be a person who can be proud of herself, enjoy spending time with many friends without causing trouble to others, and lead a happy life. I think it would be delightful if we could also grow as parents in the process.
I'm thinking of getting married, and she wants to live here with you, Mom. His words left me shocked, twice. First, my son's wedding announcement of getting married. He, who had just turned 40 this year, had been whining about not having a girlfriend, even in front of me. Second, it was unusual these days for a bride to be positive about living with her mother-in-law. Up until then, my son and I had been living together in this 2-bedroom apartment. My husband passed away from overwork before my son entered elementary school. Ever since then, my son and I had been supporting each other. My son was still a young child, but he tried his best to support me, even cooking dinner for me as I was working tirelessly day and night. Even after he grew up and started working, my son did not leave home as he was always concerned about me. He cared and didn't want me to be living alone and lonely. I had mixed feelings about him. It was then that he announced his will to get married. You don't have to worry about me. Why don't you look for a house where you can live as a couple without interruption? I somehow felt anxious about living with a daughter-in-law. Before moving to this apartment, I had lived with my husband's parents at their house. Living together was really tough. I was nagged at by my mother-in-law, and my father-in-law ordered me around with loads of chores on a daily basis. As a result, I collapsed within a year of marriage and had days when I could not even get out of bed. My mother-in-law tried to force me out of bed and make me do the housework. I got so scared that I confessed everything to my husband. My husband was genuinely worried about me and decided to leave his parents' house with me.
What kind of daughter-in-law are you? Trying to steal our precious son? You can leave by yourself.
My mother-in-law continued to rant until the last minute before we moved out. My husband turned his back on his parents and brought me to the apartment where we live now. That's why I couldn't agree to live with my son and his wife. No matter how friendly you try to be, your daughter-in-law is still a stranger. Living together will definitely cause frustrations. I knew from my bitter experience with my in-laws how hard it would really be to endure such a life. Knowing that, I was hesitant to live with my daughter-in-law. Seeing my hesitation, my son decided to bring the girl who would be his wife to our home. He wanted me to see what kind of person she was.
Nice to meet you. I hope we can get along.
She was 20 years old, much younger than my son. She was a very quiet girl, nervously keeping her eyes cast down. I couldn't help but wonder, how did such a young girl meet my son and decide to marry him? I couldn't stop wondering. Seeing my confused expression, my son, with a bashful smile, began to explain how they met. He's an instructor at a driving school, and she was one of his students, it seems. At that driving school, most instructors are pretty strict. But he was really kind, and before I knew it, I fell for him. She shyly explained her reasons for falling for my son. Upon hearing this, my son turned beet red. At first, I was surprised, but seeing the happiness on my son's face, I felt like crying. Finally, a woman had appeared who could support my son. You say you want to live with us. Are you really sure? If you need financial help, I can assist. Fortunately, I have some savings. If it can support my son and her in their happiness, I want to help as much as possible. I proposed this sincerely, but she shook her head vigorously.
If you're okay with it, I really want to live together. I want to help out, to pay back for all the hard work you've done.
What a kind-hearted girl she was. Not only did she care for my son, but she also cared about me, her future mother-in-law. I was both surprised and touched. With her, I thought maybe we could make it work, living under the same roof. Before I knew it, I found myself nodding in agreement. And so, my son and she got married, and we all started living together in our apartment. But the new bride turned out to be a surprising character. Just a week into our shared living, I began to feel a sense of unease.
Mother-in-law, let me do all the housework. You take it easy.
I had thought she would continue to work even after we lived together, but apparently she hadn't been working even before the marriage, and there was no sign of her getting a job. She did do the housework, but the laundry was sloppy, and frankly her cooking was not so great. But I felt if I said anything, she might take me as a nagging, difficult mother-in-law, so I chose to bear with it. Wanting to lighten her load a little, I said, "Thank you for always cooking. Let me handle dinner today. Why don't you take a break?" But she refused flatly.
"No, I'll do it. Please don't take my work away from me."
She stubbornly refused. So the moment we decided to live together, I was no longer able to step into my own kitchen. Even when I tried to help out with the cleaning and took out the vacuum cleaner, she snatched it away from me with a slightly irritated look on her face.
"So, listen, mother-in-law. I've told you. It's my job. Please, just stay out of it."
Her attitude was drastically different from the one she had shown when we first met after the wedding, and I found myself utterly bewildered. My son, wanting to provide for his wife and me, started working a part-time job at night, in addition to his full-time job during the day. This meant he often came home late, leaving her and me alone in the house for long stretches of time. She complained about virtually everything I did, which led me to retreat into my bedroom more and more. Whenever I'd emerge out to go to the restroom, I'd find her relaxing in the living room, nonchalantly watching TV. I felt incredibly uncomfortable in my own home, and I couldn't help but sigh quietly to myself. But that was not all. At one point, my son said something that took me completely by surprise. "Mom, don't you think you're making her work a little too hard? It's not fair to make her do all the housework." "What?" I exclaimed in surprise, raising my voice involuntarily. My son was looking at me with a grimace as if I was the villain. Despite telling me to do nothing, she had been playing the victim and complaining to my son. "I'm not making her do anything. She said she would do all the housework." "Well, she is your daughter-in-law. She's obviously trying to be respectful to you. You should appreciate her more. It's not fair to her. She's so young." I was perplexed by my son's logic, that her youth was a cause for sympathy, and to be honest, I was hurt that he wouldn't believe my side of the story. Since then, I'd had to constantly be on my toes around her. However, she would always misinterpret my actions, and I ended up constantly troubled and distressed. Still, I would occasionally say, "Thank you for everything you do. I'll take care of things around the house today. Why don't you go out and relax?" But her responses were always along the lines of,
"Are you trying to say that I'm in the way when I'm home? I'm going to have dinner with my husband, so you should eat first, mother-in-law."
Unbeknownst to my son, who came home late, I found myself eating alone in my bedroom. The silence of my bedroom with no television made me feel incredibly lonely. I could hear her laughing at the TV show in the living room. I began to fear that I would forever be treated as an intruder in this home. This went on for almost a year. One day, after I finished eating in my room as usual, I headed to the kitchen to wash the dishes. I quickly averted my gaze from the living room, which had been completely redecorated to suit my daughter-in-law's taste, and began to wash the dishes in a hurry. Suddenly my eyes caught my daughter-in-law, who was relaxing on the sofa, slowly rising to her feet.
"Excuse me, could you stop it already?"
Her first words left me speechless. As I turned my head in confusion, she bared her teeth at me.
"Don't play dumb," she exclaimed. "Your late husband built this apartment, right? I found that out while cleaning up your room the other day. You must have substantial savings from the rental income. Why are you letting my husband work while you just laze around at home?"
Indeed, this apartment, where 8 families, including us, reside, was built by my late husband for our living. My husband was a good businessman running a company, and he made a bold decision to separate our living room from his parents. I lost my mother at an early age, and my father was happily living with his second wife. So at the time, my husband was my only source of support. "Even if something happens to me, I won't let you struggle." He built this apartment so that I could live a stable life for the rest of my life. As long as there are tenants, there is a steady income. Nevertheless, the reason our son works is that he wants to be independent. My son, who now has a wife, is trying to provide for his family in his own way. However, it seems that his wife misunderstands that I am causing him to struggle because I am here. The words of my daughter-in-law continued.
"Eventually, mothers who can't let go of their children are totally dependent on them financially, right? To be frank, it's annoying. An unemployed, living on a pension like you is hindering our life. If you care about your son, please leave this apartment."
I couldn't understand what my daughter-in-law was saying at all. In the first place, Wasn't it you who wanted to live together? I have no idea when I have ever clung to my son.
If it's hard for you to say, I'll tell him directly. The apartment and inheritance from your late husband are his, so I'm sure he'll get you into a good nursing home.
Ignoring my defiant daughter-in-law for a moment, I finished the dishes, and then there was only one thing I wanted to say. Listen, you seem to be misunderstanding something, but the landlord here is not my son.
Huh?
At her somewhat stupid voice, I sighed internally and continued. Listen well. First of all, thank you for cleaning my room, but did you rummage through my things without permission? The property deed of the apartment was in the back of the drawer. My daughter-in-law's shoulders trembled. Even if she's family, rummaging through my belongings is a criminal act.
You're the bad one for hiding what he should have. Why do you have it?
Well, because I'm the owner.
That's a lie. He said he was the owner.
To quiet my daughter-in-law, I showed her the deed of the apartment. Look, my name's on it. It's not his. She was speechless. Just then, my son returned home at the perfect time. Sensing the tension in the room, he seemed panicked, too. His wife, with a great deal of aggression, thrust the apartment deed at him.
Hey, weren't you saying you're the owner of this apartment? How do you explain this?
My son, left stunned by his wife's intense fury, finally looking guilty, he responded, I'm sorry. I just wanted to impress you a bit. I wanted you to say, wow. It seemed like he lied a small lie, hoping to get some praise from his wife. Actually, when I eventually pass away, the apartment will indeed be his, so he wasn't entirely wrong.
We've been patient all this time, haven't we? Let's make you the owner now, and have your mother move into a nursing home. That way everyone will be happy, don't you think?
Nursing home? But... Our son tried to object, but his wife's momentum was unstoppable.
We've struggled through living together when we didn't even want to. Isn't it time we got a reward?
I knew it. She never really wanted to live with me, it seems. She was trying to flatter me and make a good impression, but in the end, she found me too much of a nuisance. My son seemed conflicted for a while, caught in the argument between his wife and me, but eventually turned to me. Mom, I'm sorry. I'll find you a good nursing home, I promise. I won't let you suffer. So, could you give this apartment to me? Apparently my son had decided to side with his wife. Well, I guess it can't be helped. Husbands should prioritize their wives. But I too have endured a lot over the past year. I have no intention of meekly moving into a nursing home. Fine. I'll transfer the ownership of this apartment to you. Do what you wish. But I'm choosing my new place myself. I said just that and returned to my bedroom. I could hear the triumphant voice of my daughter-in-law from the other side of the door.
We did it! Now we can finally become the owners of this apartment.
I could also hear my son's voice echoing his wife's excitement. I could feel the days of hard work with my son crumble like a house of cards, but I couldn't afford to be downcast. I decided to make my next move. Several days later, I transferred the ownership of the apartment to my son as promised, and decided to leave the apartment immediately. I kept my new place of residence a secret. Mom, thank you so much. I'll do my best from here on out.
Thank you so much. We're going to be happy together.
My son and his wife saw me off, cheerful as always. I bade them farewell with a forced smile. I moved into a condominium with nursing care services. It had a view of the mountains and the sea, a dream my late husband and I had. The spacious and comfortable environment, without creaking floors, like the old apartment, and the vast view seemed to cleanse my soul. Just then, a call came in on my mobile phone. It was from my son. When I answered, a voice filled with rage reached my ears. Mom, what the hell? The apartment has a severe termite infestation. They say it needs to be rebuilt. Just as I thought, a few months before I decided to move out, termites were found during a building inspection. The building was old, and I was considering rebuilding it, but my son was too busy with work, and I hadn't had the chance to discuss it with him. I had informed the other tenants in advance, and they had all agreed to move out. As it was my responsibility, I covered the moving costs, and there were no issues. Despite the mass departure of tenants, my son and daughter-in-law hadn't realized the urgency of the situation. The apartment is yours now, isn't it? Whether you rebuild it or demolish it, you can do as you please. What? Both options are incredibly expensive. I can't afford it. Can't you chip in a little? Absolutely not. This conversation is over. To tell the truth, I had $1 million that I had saved by investing my late husband's inheritance. I had been saving for my son's future, but now I didn't feel that way at all. That's why I was able to use it openly as a down payment for this condominium. My daughter-in-law chimed in on the phone.
Why hasn't your son inherited a single cent of his father's estate? This is unfair. That's not what we agreed on. Before my husband passed away, he left me a will, bequeathing all his property to me. Apparently, he was concerned about his greedy parents trying to manipulate our son, his grandson, to get their hands on the wealth. Fortunately, I was completely estranged from my in-laws after we stopped living together. That was indeed a blessing. My son, I'm sure, must have been bragging to his wife about the apartment and even the savings, lying through his teeth. It was clear as day that his wife's motive for marrying him was money. Please help me. I've always dreamed of being a stay-at-home wife. Well, if you're out of money, you'll have to work. You're young. You can find jobs anywhere, right? Best of luck. Marriage isn't always about happiness. Overcoming various hardships is what defines a couple. Perhaps this is a fitting end for my son's wife, blinded by money, and my son who prioritized such a wife, neglecting his own mother. Afterward, my son spent all his money to demolish the apartment. He planned to sell the land once it was cleared, but the truth is, it was leased from a third party, and according to the agreement, it had to be returned after the demolition. His plan to profit from the land sale crumbled to dust, so the couple ended up penniless. To accommodate his wife's unwillingness to lower her living standards, my son is apparently working tirelessly day and night. I've changed my phone number so there are no calls, but somehow they found out my address, and I received letters from my son and his wife every month. I discard them without opening. I don't want anyone to disrupt this elegant, solitary life of mine. Outside the window, the blue sea and the green trees are shining in the sunlight. My deceased husband smiles at me from his portrait near my bed. You could help him, you know. Not sure about his wife, though. I felt as if he was speaking to me that way.
Hey, you're not the one who ordered the appraisal of my family home, are you? I asked fearfully. My husband, puzzled, replied,
Yes, I did. Why?
Why? Why would you try to sell my family home without my permission?
Because we're a couple, right? Your family home is also my family home, isn't it?
He calmly uttered these incomprehensible words, not only refusing to listen to reason, but acting as if I were the one in the wrong. In the end, he said,
If you don't like it, you can leave.
So I decided to divorce him and left the house. My name is Alyssa Hudson, and I am 29 years old. After graduating from college, I worked as a pharmacist at a local pharmacy. A few years ago, I met George, who is 3 years older than me and who I eventually married. He was not only kind and funny, but he also had a wonderful quality of being considerate towards me and those important to me. However, getting to this point was a rough journey. George had a gambling habit which led to several fights. He poured most of his paycheck into horse racing and slot machines, and when he ran out of money, he borrowed more. It was bearable when he was winning, but when he was losing, he was irritable all the time. I loved him, but I couldn't marry a gambling addict. As I hesitated to marry him, he looked at me with sincere eyes and promised, I will quit gambling. I will repay all my debts. So please marry me. True to his word, he quit gambling completely and cleared his debts. I decided to marry him, but with one condition. If you gamble again, we will divorce. He agreed to this, and after 3 years of dating, we finally tied the knot. But George had a sad past. He lost his parents in an accident when he was young and was raised in an orphanage. As a result, he had very few memories of his parents. Our house is a distance that can be covered by a plane ride from my family home. After our marriage, we frequently visited my parents, and George cherished them as if they were his own.
Dear in-laws, thank you for always being kind to me. I'm glad that you treat me like your own son. It feels like I finally have parents of my own,
George would say with a smile in front of my parents. Seeing his happiness warmed my heart. Several years after our marriage, one day... What? Dad? You must be kidding. The sudden call from my mom was to inform me of my father's death. He collapsed suddenly this morning and he's unconscious. It's too late. No! Worried about my crying mother over the phone, George and I immediately headed for my family home. When I arrived, I saw my father lying there, his face pale, sleeping forever.
Darling, why? Please wake up.
My mother desperately shaking my father's shoulder, calling out to him. Seeing her like that left me at a loss for words. After the funeral, I suggested to my mother that she should live with us, but she didn't agree.
This is the house where I made memories with him, so I'll continue living here. Your sister is also here.
Since my older sister had recently divorced and decided to return to the family home with her daughter, we left the care of our mother to her. A few months later, we received news from my sister that our mother had passed away. According to my sister, ever since our father passed away, our mother seemed to wither away at an alarming rate. She could barely eat and would lock herself up in her room. Even when we tried to convince her to visit the hospital, she wouldn't listen. By the time she collapsed at home, it was too late. Not only did we lose our father, but our mother too. If only we could have helped her sooner. When I think about it, I can't stop feeling regretful. Why didn't I call more often or visit more? I can't help but wonder if I was merely thinking, my sister is there so it'll be fine. But Mom wasn't fine at all. I'm not the only one mourning the loss of our parents. When my husband, George, learned of my mother's death, he broke down in tears right before my eyes. The same man who consoled me when my father died was now crying like a child. Seeing this, I realized how much he truly cared for my parents. After the funeral was over, things seemed to calm down, but my sister and I were left with various procedures to handle. The main issue was our family home. It was unthinkable to let go of the house our parents had cherished so much. After discussing it, we decided that my sister would live there with her daughter. 2 months later, I received an unexpected call from my sister. Hello, sis?
Oh, Alyssa, I'm sorry, it was sudden.
She asked, her voice noticeably different, dark, and unlike her usual self. What's up? It's rare for you to call, I replied. Actually, a real estate agent just came to my place. A realtor? I was puzzled. I don't really understand it either. Did you do something, Alyssa? Me? No, I didn't do anything, I assured her. I see. While humming, my sister muttered, strange. My sister seemed to have thought that I was the one who called the realtor to our family home. So, why did the realtor visit? I asked, throwing the most pressing question at my sister. They came to appraise the house, she explained. An appraisal? Isn't that to price the house? But my sister had no intention of selling our family home, so why? From her story, a realtor had suddenly come to our family home, claiming, I came to appraise the house upon request. My sister didn't remember requesting such a thing and wondered if I had done it instead, which was why she contacted me. Hold on, that's strange. There's no way we'd sell the precious family home left by our parents, I exclaimed. That's what I thought too. We agreed to keep the family home. She agreed. So what happened then? I asked. I told them we didn't request an appraisal. Oh, I did ask for their contact info though. Can you give me the realtor's contact info? I asked my sister, got it, and immediately called them. I gave them our family home address and asked to speak to the person who did the appraisal. When I asked, they confirmed that they had indeed visited our family home that day. Well, neither my sister nor I requested an appraisal of our family home, I told them. Well, we have received such a request, they defended. Can you tell me the name of the requester? I inquired. It's Mr. George Hudson, they revealed. Excuse me? George, this has got to be a joke. Could it be that my husband is trying to sell our family home without my permission? I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I asked the representative again. You're joking, right? No, we really did receive a request from him. But how could that?
We were told that there's a house that will be put up for sale soon, so we'd like an appraisal to know its value.
In the face of this unexpected situation, I somehow managed to refuse the appraisal request. I immediately headed to my husband's location. Hey, can I talk to you for a second?
Huh? What's up?
My husband responded, casually playing with his smartphone. Hey, you didn't request an appraisal for my family home, did you? I nervously asked, to which my husband responded with a puzzled look.
Yeah, I did. So?
So, what were you thinking? Making an appraisal request without consulting me first? Even my sister was shocked.
Why are you so angry? An appraisal isn't a big deal, right?
That's not the point. Why did you do this on your own? My sister lives in our family home, and we have no intention of selling it. My voice was getting louder. My husband sighed in annoyance.
I don't know why you're so angry, but don't make a fuss over just an appraisal. We haven't sold anything yet.
That's not the issue. Why? Why would you try to sell our family home on your own?
Well, we're married, right? I'm your husband, and your family home is also my family home, isn't it?
What? I understand that we're married, but that doesn't mean he can just decide to sell our family home. Fighting back my anger, I continued to question him. Stop it. We may be married, but it's absolutely crazy to think about selling the precious home my parents left us without even discussing it. In response to my statement, George responded with
But you know, that large house is a waste for just your sister and her 2 children to live in, don't you think?
What? What are you talking about?
She's a single mom, so wouldn't it be better for her to live in an apartment or something? Besides, if we sell that house and get the money, it would secure our lifestyle, right?
His words left me at a loss, standing in stunned silence. Seeing my reaction, George blurted out,
Anyway, your parents aren't here anymore, Alyssa. All you have to do is listen to me, your husband.
I could no longer see the kind man I married. It seems like all he cared about was himself, his ideas, and his beliefs. But I can't possibly accept such outrageous claims. Don't mess around. It's despicable to try and sell what my parents treasured so much. I shouted at George, to which he retorted,
Alyssa, do you value your family home more than me?
What?
If you value your family home so much, you don't belong here anymore. If you don't like it, you can leave this house.
With loud footsteps, he returned to his own room. At that moment, an indescribable rage welled up within me. I can't believe it. I never thought he would tell me to leave. At the same time, a thought came to my mind. It was the reason why George suddenly wanted to sell our family home. Why all of a sudden? We're not in financial difficulty. But I don't need to think about it. Knowing his past, I can easily imagine. Gambling. He must need money for gambling. That's the only reason George would suddenly want to sell our family home and get a fortune. He kept saying over and over, I'll quit. But he was gambling again, secretly, and selling our beloved family home to fund it. This time, I reached my limit. If he's going to do that, I'm going to do what I want. At the beginning of our marriage, I told him, if you gamble again, we will divorce. I packed my bags while my husband was sleeping, left the divorce papers on the table, and headed for the family home where my sister and her children live. The next day, when I woke up, I had a lot of missed calls and messages from my husband. He must have seen the divorce papers. I reluctantly answered his call again. Hello? As soon as he heard my voice, he fired off a rapid succession of questions.
Hey, why aren't you home? Why are there divorce papers left here? Where are you right now?
You're the one who said, if you don't like it, leave.
Well, that might be true, but...
George, you said, right? Alyssa should just do as I say. So I did as you said and left, right? At my remark, my husband responded in shock.
I may have said to leave, but I didn't say anything about divorce. Let's talk it out first.
Talk it out? Then let me hear it. Why did you think of selling our family home?
That...
Answer me properly. After persistently questioning him, my suspicion turned out to be correct. Without telling me, my husband had started gambling again. And not just casino and horse racing as before. He seemed to have started investing in stocks and foreign exchange as well, borrowing money every time he made a loss and covering living expenses so I wouldn't find out. As a result, it turned out that he was nearly $100,000 in debt. What? $100,000? You're kidding, right?
I'm sorry. Once I started borrowing money, I couldn't stop, and I couldn't tell you because I didn't want you to find out.
But that doesn't mean you can just sell someone's family home. You're finished as a human being.
No, Alyssa, that's not it. I didn't mean any harm.
My husband, who had always proudly told me that he was saving for the future. I thought he had completely given up gambling and was working hard. But he was giving me borrowed money pretending it was his salary. Of course I, who hadn't noticed until now, am also an irremediable fool. But because I loved my husband, I believed his words and had lived my married life up until now.
Alyssa, please, come back.
I poured out my feelings to my begging husband. I've always believed in your words, I'll quit gambling, but nothing's changed since before we got married. I can't. I've reached my limit. I don't see you as a family member anymore. Get a divorce and never show up in front of me again. Swallowing my feelings of frustration, I let out all I wanted to say and slammed the phone down. Even after he called back several times, but I never answered. Subsequently, I contacted a lawyer and, by my strong will, the divorce was finalized. It was accepted smoothly due to the complete fault on George's side, and I was even able to claim alimony. Of course, it was impossible for him to sell my family's house. All George was left with was a debt of $100,000 from gambling. Even after the divorce was finalized, he used every possible means to ask me to get back together, like a stalker.
I was the one at fault. I won't do anything selfish anymore. I'll quit gambling for real this time. I mean it. Please forgive me. Without you, Alyssa, I'll really end up all alone.
It's too late for such words. My heart does not waver. Rather, it makes me feel sick to my stomach. After that, I changed my phone number and email address and blocked George's contact. I also consulted with the police and managed to get a restraining order. That ended any remaining connection with George. As of now, George is still struggling with his debt. His income alone can't keep up with the repayments, and he's caught in a negative cycle of repaying debt with more debt. If things continue like this, full repayment is completely impossible. He might end up filing for bankruptcy. It's difficult to cure a gambling addict from the root. Now I think that divorcing was the right choice. On the other hand, I've been able to live peaceful days with my sister and niece in the beloved family home my parents left behind. My marriage to George might have been a mistake, but in the end, I was able to protect this house that my father and mother left me. And I was able to regain these peaceful days with my sister and lovely niece. For the sake of my parents who raised me with such care, I won't look back at the past. I'll only look forward and live on.
My husband, Brian, is incredibly ambitious. His transition from a regional branch to the headquarters where I work appears to be fueled by a desire to climb the corporate ladder and become wealthy. This ambition made me wary of him. When we first met, Brian asked me, "Linda, your father is connected to our company, isn't he?" "Yes, I work for the company where my father serves as an executive." I've been viewed differently by people inside and outside the company because I have a relative in a position of power. However, time and time again, I've proven my worth through my skills and performance. In a way, my assertive nature might be suited for this type of environment. Despite my initial suspicion, Brian, being handsome and motivated, was a breath of fresh air compared to the all-talk men at headquarters. Working with Brian was enjoyable, and he was always proactive in his approach. I found myself gradually drawn to him. Brian proposed to me, saying, "Linda, with you, I can give my all in both work and home. I believe we can make a great couple. Will you marry me?" I responded with, "Are you sure? I might get so absorbed in work that I may not be able to cherish you." We both are career-oriented, so we spend less time together at home and go out or travel less than most couples. But we trust each other and enjoy our time together. Therefore, I was happy. However, this spring, it was decided that Brian would be transferred alone to a regional branch. Brian, who enjoyed working at headquarters, was deeply disappointed, and I felt it was unfair, given that we were newlyweds. However, I've heard that this is a crucial assignment that could lead to a promotion, and he should be able to return to the headquarters in about a year. With today's technology, we can video call via computer or smartphone. Given that we spend less time together anyway, we can manage our feelings of loneliness and distance. Besides, if I really miss him, I can always go visit. With this in mind, I saw off my husband with a smile. It's been about 3 months since Brian moved to the regional office. We video call each other once or twice a week to update each other on our lives. As I imagined, the world is convenient now, and if we carefully set aside time for long video calls, we don't feel lonely. "It seems like you're having fun there. I'd like to do things like visiting local attractions. Maybe I should come to visit during the summer vacation?" I casually mentioned, to which Brian responded with uncertainty. "Yeah, I'd love to see you, but they're working me non-stop. I'm not even sure if I'll get any summer vacation." "Oh, I see. Leading a project must be exhausting. Take care." I trust my husband's words, and I am saddened by that. Suddenly, I started to wonder about the interior of the apartment my husband Brian was renting, which was beyond his faith. I thought that maybe he couldn't clean properly because he's so busy. But, looking at the part of the room visible on the screen, it seemed surprisingly tidy. It's impressive how he manages to keep things neat and tidy, despite being so busy. I was about to compliment him on that when I noticed an unfamiliar bag at the edge of the screen and couldn't say anything. The bag was a woman's item. Even someone like me, who was not very up-to-date with trends, could tell at a glance that it was a high-end brand. "Hey, what's that bag?" I naturally pointed out. Brian took a quick glance over his shoulder and replied a bit flusteredly. Look, it's a wedding anniversary gift. We don't get to see each other much, right? But I wanted to make sure to give you something tangible at least. How is it? It has a beautiful shape, and it comes with a matching coin purse, which will be handy, right? I thought it would suit you. I ordered it online, so I wasn't sure about the condition. That's why I unboxed it. I wanted it to be a surprise, but I guess I messed up. I'm sorry. No, it's fine. I'm happy, and I'm looking forward to its arrival. No matter how you think about it, it's suspicious. The excuse seems plausible, but there is a sense of mistrust. But at that time, I couldn't confront him, because I still wanted to believe in Brian. Actually, the bag was indeed sent to me later, so it might have been rude to doubt him. The message card was filled with affectionate comments, and I was sincerely happy. However, despite having all this reassurance, I just couldn't erase the slight sense of distrust. I ended up not even taking the bag out of the box, and it's still in my closet. Several months have passed since then. On a day when I had gotten used to the life without Brian and to communicating via video calls, "Well, Brian, I should get going." Yeah. It's getting colder, so be careful not to catch a cold, Linda." I was about to say thank you and end the call when the doorbell at my house rang. "What's wrong?" A courier has arrived. You can hang up the call, Brian. See you later." Saying so, I got up and headed for the entrance. At the time, the thought of quickly receiving the package dominated my mind, so I couldn't even consider that I hadn't hung up the call, or that the screen was left on. When I got the package and went back to my room, my husband's face was still on the computer screen. I guess this is the end of the call. For some reason, Brian seemed to think that his side of the remote connection had been cut off, even though his image was still being displayed on my side. I was about to call out to him when an unbelievable sight appeared on the screen, and I instinctively covered my mouth with my hand. There was a bed on the other side of the desk where Brian's computer was, and an unknown woman was sitting on it. Despite being broad daylight, she was in a bathrobe. What's more, I noticed that the exact same bag I'd said was a present for a recent anniversary was lying under the bed. Memories of a suspicion I had almost forgotten began to resurface in my mind. Brian had indeed brought a woman into his apartment, and it wasn't just once or twice. The woman was casually playing with her smartphone on the bed, appearing completely accustomed to being in Brian's room. "Oh, you seem to be having so much fun chatting with your wife," the woman said with a cackle, as if to mock me, who was not present. "That might be true, but she's not here now," Brian replied, grinning without realizing that I was listening. "You're such a jerk. The real jerk is you, leaving your bag out in plain sight. I had to buy the same bag just to camouflage it. It was expensive, you know." "That's your own fault." "It's a shame that a luxury item like that is wasted on her. She has no sense of fashion." As they continued their playful banter, Brian and the woman lay down on the bed. I couldn't bear to watch any longer, so I shut down the computer. If I had to put my feelings into words, I would say I just felt regret. It seemed he had gifted me the bag as an anniversary present, but was it actually given to cover up his infidelity? "Brian, you're really the worst," I muttered, the insult slipping out before I could stop it. It's not something I really wanted to say. And that girl is... I also felt something familiar about the woman he was cheating with. I'm sure she's the daughter of the executive vice president who joined the company this year. The audacity to bring her all the way out to the country for a secret rendezvous? It seems like quite an elaborate affair. But somehow, it makes sense to me. I can't help but chuckle, thinking it's a typical choice for an ambitious man like Brian. After all, I too am the daughter of a high-ranking executive. It's just like Brian to pick a mistress who could prove useful in some way. Now, I can't believe in anything anymore. I thought he loved me, as a person. Just when I got tired of feeling angry, I started feeling like I couldn't forgive him now. So I decided to check the truth, and took action. A few days after that shocking video call, Brian suggested we spend some leisure time together. Perhaps he thought it would look bad if we didn't pretend to be friendly from time to time. I responded with an eager yes to his suggestion. Holding the purse that Brian had given me, I visited the apartment he had rented. "See, I keep it pretty clean, don't I? I'll go get us some iced tea." Watching Brian's back as he headed towards the kitchen, I saw my opportunity and took action. I quietly placed the coin purse that matched my bag inside the cupboard of Brian's computer desk. Unbeknownst to Brian, the coin purse contained a bug. It was a high-end model with excellent battery life, so it should continue to capture sounds for several days. Without any evidence, I wouldn't be able to complain. I assumed Brian would notice it, of course, but his mistress has the same one too. Would he be able to distinguish who owns which? If he does distinguish them, I'll just have to find another way. If he doesn't, that's a win for me. I'm excited to see what kind of information I can gather. When the battery is about to die, I'll call Brian to confirm. "I seem to have lost the coin purse you gave me. Do you have it over there by any chance?" "Oh, yeah. It was wedged in the drawer of my desk. You're so clumsy." I guess Brian found the coin purse, but didn't open it. I could guess from his casual response. If I ask him to send it back because I need it right away, the coin purse will be back in my hands within a few days. Then, as I nervously played the audio, There it was, clear as day. My husband Brian and the daughter of the executive having an illicit affair, their voices engaged in an intimate conversation. Based on this data, I hired a private investigator and had him look into this. As he dug deeper, it turned out that Brian was involved with many more women, not just the executive's daughter. There were so many, I couldn't even count them all on one hand, and they included daughters of board members and department heads. As for me, I began to uncover aspects of Brian that I never knew before, as I started listening to his colleagues in his department. Apparently, Brian had been struggling with his performance recently and seemed to be quite stressed. Realizing that his efforts alone were no longer sufficient to achieve results, he must have shifted his focus from work to networking. I feel genuinely sorry for him. Failing to perform can be a hard pill to swallow. However, that has nothing to do with him betraying me and having affairs with other women. Moreover, he seems to be plotting to use these women as stepping stones to further his career. It's a despicable behavior, both as a man and as a professional. As I continued to investigate on my own, I felt my feelings for Brian quickly cooling off, and a feeling of vengeance began to sprout within me, for he had wounded my pride. Brian's work assignment away from home ended sooner than expected, before even a year was up. He returned home. To celebrate his return, I invited both of our parents and threw a home party. With a feast delivered to our door, lively music playing, and just family around, the atmosphere of our small party was quite jovial. Wait, the music's vibe has changed. And is that my voice? The speakers synced to the music player started blasting Brian's conversation with the executive's daughter throughout the house. Brian turned pale, confused, and flustered. "What's this, Linda?" I had already explained the situation to my parents. However, Brian's parents were in a state of panic, hearing their son's voice entangled with a woman they didn't recognize, and started to confront him. "Brian, what's the meaning of this?" "Surely you're not cheating on Linda." By playing the audio recordings of Brian's conversations with the other woman, which I obtained with the help of the investigator, Brian finally realized that I knew about his affairs. "Linda, you knew everything, didn't you?" Trembling, Brian turned to me with a question. With a smile, I responded, "Why not consider marrying the CEO's daughter next? That'll land you the CEO position in a snap. Though, considering that I've spread these recordings to all the other women you've been involved with, I'm not sure you'll be able to handle the job, even if you become CEO." At that, Brian clung to me, his face a picture of despair. "You also prefer a successful man on the fast-track promotion, right? It was a necessary step for my career. Please overlook it." "But what about us? Is our marriage also just a step towards your success?" "No, that's not it at all," he quickly replied. "You are special." Despite his words, Brian seemed flustered. When he was at a loss for words, my father stepped in and addressed him. "Brian, did you approach my daughter to take advantage of my position? Tell us the truth." In response to my father's earnest question, Brian confessed. "Initially, it was about getting ahead. Even though other women were merely tools for my advancement, I am truly serious about Linda. I promise I won't cheat again. Please forgive me this time. I want a chance to make it right." It was hard to judge whether he was lying or telling the truth. Yet, after such blatant infidelity, even when he claims that I'm the only special one, I find it hard to trust him. "It's not my place to decide," my father continued. "It's up to Linda. I can't even tell if you really mean what you're saying, but I can tell you this much. I despise you, and I can't accept you as my son-in-law." Even Brian's parents seemed doubtful of their son's honesty. "Brian, we want to believe in you, but we know that you've always had a strong desire to overcome your small town upbringing and make it big in the city. That's why, even with all the evidence piled up against you, we find it hard to believe that Linda is truly special to you. Frankly, we regret the way we raised you. Even you guys? While my father's words certainly had an impact, it seemed that the disbelief of his own parents hurt Brian the most. Regardless of what others said, the decision to trust Brian or not was ultimately up to me. I decided to be honest about my feelings. I cannot trust a man who has repeatedly lied to me, deceived me, and even ridiculed me with another woman. I love my work, and I appreciate professional success. But that's why I always want to achieve success on my own. I would never stoop so low as to use someone else for my gain. But I'm telling you that you're different. Why are you abandoning me? We're married, aren't we? If you really considered us to be married, if you truly cherished me, why would you give me the same handbag that you gave to the woman you're having an affair with? And on our anniversary, of all times. Stop making a fool of me. I don't want to share a family with a lazy man who depends on others to get ahead. I want a divorce. With those words, it seemed Brian had given up. His shoulders drooped, and he began to sniffle out of frustration. Well, he had just lost his most convenient stepping stone for his career, so it served him right. Exhausted, Brian was taken home by his parents. It was unlikely he would ever return to our home. Following through on my words, I divorced Brian. After I exposed Brian's wrongdoings to all the women involved, he was sued, not only by me, but also by all the women he had affairs with. Brian couldn't possibly pay all the settlement money with the money he had. He was forced to sell all his properties and even had to take on debt. Brian will probably lose his freedom for a while, paying back his debt. He voluntarily resigned from his company, but in reality, he was practically fired. Once the rumor of his actions reached the higher-ups, it was inevitable they would be furious. With rumors spreading around the office, he probably felt uncomfortable as well. Currently, he's working in a small factory he managed to find employment at, diligently paying back his debt. His parents told me about his situation when they came to apologize. As for me, I have no intentions of ever meeting him again. Of course, I received the alimony from Brian. As for the handbag, which was the same as his mistress's, I was surprised when I sold it for almost the same price as the new one, because it was barely used. It felt like a little bonus. After separating from Brian, I began to contemplate what marriage really meant, and what's important in life. What's most important to me might still be my work, just like before. However, it's not like I don't have dreams of having a family. I might use the money from selling the bag to pamper myself a bit, preparing for a new romance, as I had to work today.
I'm divorcing you. Pack your things and leave.
Out of nowhere, my husband of 37 years delivered this unexpected blow. Moreover, he would be retiring in 3 months and wanted me out of the house by then. To me, who had been thinking that I would be spending the rest of my life with my husband, this came as a bolt from the blue. What do you mean by that? Unable to comprehend the situation, my husband shoved divorce papers with his name filled out into my hands. And then he spoke harshly without any mercy.
I'm tired of seeing your face. You're ugly and your face is all wrinkly. Your eyes are so disproportionately big that you look like a frog.
Is my appearance suddenly the issue now?
Of course. Looks are everything for a woman. Just as you would throw away an old rug, I'm throwing you away.
I can't believe it. As a homemaker who had always depended on her husband since our marriage, I had no means to survive if abandoned. Even though the passionate feelings of our courting days had evolved, I still loved my husband. The shock left me numb and unable to think, as if I had been hit with a large hammer. My name is Lily Hazel, 59 years old. My husband of the same age was my high school classmate and my first love. After graduating high school, I went to a fashion college, worked at an apparel company for a few years, and at the age of 22, I married him and became a housewife. Then soon after, we were blessed with a son. Our son has since grown up, started his own family, and is now a father of one. My husband is the old-fashioned type who doesn't do any housework at all, not even accompanying me to the supermarket, the typical dominant husband. It may be unthinkable to young couples today, but it was common in our generation. Yet, we were supposed to have spent our 37 years of marriage supporting each other in our own way. After my husband's retirement, we had various plans to travel around the country and live leisurely. But the sudden declaration of divorce left me feeling as if I had been abandoned in the darkness. Once I regained my composure, I repeatedly pondered over what my husband had said, but I couldn't understand why he had brought up divorce. I couldn't accept it, so when my husband returned home several hours later, I expressed my desire to sit down and talk with him. I can't accept that you want a divorce because of my appearance. Let's discuss this properly.
I've been patient because I'm kind. Even though you're unattractive, any other man would have dumped you long ago. Because of you, I've wasted half of my life.
That's harsh. Every conversation with my husband, my heart is torn and throbbing with pain. Looking back, I realized that even when I made efforts with makeup and fashion, he never complimented me.
So, when are you leaving?
Do you think I can easily accept your decision to divorce and just leave?
Huh? You're such a stubborn woman, making a fuss about everything.
Exasperated, my husband heaved a big sigh, flopped down on the floor, and started blasting the TV. His attitude was as if he was rejecting my words. Hey, look at me when I'm talking.
Stop nagging. Ugh, I can't wait to be alone and relax.
From then on, no matter how much I tried to talk to him, he wouldn't respond. I thought it would be counterproductive to press him further, so I decided to wait for a better time to discuss it. However, every time my husband returned home from work, the next day and the day after that, he would throw harsh words at me.
You're still here.
Or,
you're so annoying.
And he continued,
I'm going to hate you more each day.
And he even started complaining about the way I used my knife and fork. Despite my attempts to mend the relationship, the gap between us just kept widening. Is there any way to overcome this crisis? In the end, I wasn't able to go through with the divorce, but I decided it was necessary to put some distance between us, so I chose to move out. Don't you have any intention of trying to make things right with me? I asked.
Hell no! Shut up! I won't give you my severance pay if you keep nagging.
He replied. Until recently, he would always say,
Half of my retirement savings is yours. You've supported me all this time.
So I demanded half of his retirement savings when I decided to move out. Whether we divorce or separate, we'll need money, and we've lived together for 37 years, so it's only fair, right? I thought he would agree, and reluctantly, he did. When I told our son about my decision to move out, he was very surprised.
What on earth happened? Mom, you can stay with me for a while. Dad, who's never done a single household chore, won't be able to live alone. Then he'll realize how important you are,
he said. Thank you, Timothy. I hate to impose, but I'll take you up on your offer, I replied. My husband seems rather happy about the prospect of me moving out.
Good, I can finally say goodbye to you,
he replied while lounging and watching TV. On the morning I decided to leave, I was packing my bags, holding back a bitter sorrow. Then, my husband returned home with a young woman in her 30s.
Oh, you're still here?
He grumbled. I'm just about to leave. And who might she be? I asked. My husband, grinning, pulled the woman closer by the shoulder and said,
This is my new wife, Julie. She's like my brand new rug.
So this is why he was so eager to divorce and insulted me, calling me ugly. Upon learning this, any lingering affection I had for him vanished. So that's how it is, I muttered.
So, I'll be giving your share of the retirement savings to my new wife.
He announced. That's not what we agreed on. You promised. I protested.
That was then, this is now. Don't you understand that circumstances have changed?
He replied, a mocking tone in his voice. The woman, joining in on his fun, smirked at me and said, "Dumped women are pathetic, aren't they?" I was furious, but staying there would only make things worse. I get how you feel. You can give her the retirement savings, but you'll regret it, I warned. I wanted nothing more than to leave this place and this man as quickly as possible.
I won't regret anything, damn fool.
He replied. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was the fool for trying so hard to mend our relationship. I pulled out the divorce papers that I had been unable to sign up until then, quickly filled them out, and left them on the table. A bond between husband and wife that lasted 37 years? Was it really so easily broken? I left our home with a heavy heart, only to find my concerned son, Timothy, waiting for me in his car.
I've been waiting for you. Dad was with an unfamiliar woman,
he said. That's his new wife, I replied.
He was cheating? I can't forgive him.
An angry Timothy tried to rush into the house, but I stopped him. It's all right. Let's forget about people like that. More importantly, I'm sorry if I worried you. Thanks to you, I was saved. This is how I ended up staying at my son's house. My daughter-in-law had not only prepared a room for me to make me stay comfortable, but she also said, "Lily, feel at home here." My grandchild also greeted me with a smile, saying, "We've been waiting for you, Grandma." The kind considerations and words made me shed tears that I had been holding back. Thank you so much. I'll return the favor one day. 3 months after starting to live with my son, his wife, and my grandchild, my ex-husband unexpectedly ambushed me in front of my son's house.
He's a huge problem. Julie's gone, along with my retirement money.
Julie? Your new girlfriend.
What am I going to do? I'm also being chased by debt collectors.
Really? Why? He seemed desperate as he spoke, his voice trembling.
Her mother has heart disease, and they said they need $100,000 immediately. So, I borrowed the money and paid it before my retirement money came in.
You believed that? I couldn't help but laugh at the absurd story.
This isn't a laughing matter. I'm in trouble because I thought I could repay the debt with my retirement money, but now I don't have it.
Wasn't your retirement supposed to be around $220,000? Why don't you have it?
Well, I was so happy on the day it was deposited, I withdrew all of it from the bank account and took it home. Then I had a drink to celebrate and accidentally fell asleep. And when I woke up, the money was gone.
Are you serious? Who's the idiot here?
Don't say that.
Coming to me for help now isn't going to solve anything. That's why I warned you. I decided to hit him with the truth he probably didn't know. I saw this coming. Julie is a habitual shoplifter, you know. I actually met her once. 2 years ago, she ran into me while being chased by a loss prevention officer at the supermarket. At that moment, a staff member came and caught her because I had accidentally grabbed her arm. I later heard from the supermarket that she was a habitual shoplifter.
Why didn't you tell me?
When you kicked me out of the house, you said you wouldn't regret it. The one who said no regrets was you. After all, you were the one who suddenly decided to divorce me near your retirement. I had no obligation to tell you anything in detail. He was dumbstruck and collapsed. My ex-husband, who never went grocery shopping, would naturally not have known about her true identity.
What should I do now?
First, you need to pay me alimony. I smiled sweetly at him as he looked up at me pitifully.
Why? I don't have to pay you. It's been 3 months since you found out about my affair, and I'm broke.
You seem to be misunderstanding. You can claim alimony for an affair up to 3 years after the divorce. My ex-husband, who was mistaken about the 3-month period, started making excuses as he scratched his head when he heard my correction.
I intended to marry my new girlfriend, but we haven't filed the marriage certificate yet, so it's not an affair. Alimony is invalid. Too bad.
Trying to somehow talk his way out, he was talking nonsense without realizing it, so I showed him a picture on my cell phone. You know, the day I left the house, my son, who was waiting outside, took a picture of you and Julie getting cozy together. You can't deny it now. Too bad.
Damn it!
Looking down at my ex-husband, who was crouching in a pathetic manner, I hit him with even more reality. And make sure you pay the division of property properly. I'll expect exactly half of your retirement money.
What? Why? Besides, I received the retirement money after we divorced, so it's not yours, right?
Listen, the division of property refers to the wealth that we've acquired through our mutual effort during our married life. In your case, you were already set to receive a retirement payout of $220,000 from your company before our divorce. So that falls under the division of property. If you want to argue, I'm ready to take it to court. This was the first time I had ever rebutted my husband in such a strong tone. He was taken aback. All he could muster was a groan of pain. He seemed unable to form coherent words. From now on, my lawyer will be in touch. Don't ever come back. As I tried to return to my son's house, my ex-husband clung to me.
How can you live without me? Please, come back with me.
No matter how much I tried to shake him off, he kept tugging at my hand. My son, noticing the commotion, came out of the house and pulled him away.
Don't touch my mom with your filthy hands. Shut up, Timothy. I'm talking to your mom. Let's get married again.
Enough! You must be sick of seeing my face. I remember you said I look like a frog with a wrinkly face and disproportionately large eyes. Despite my stern rejection, he tried to forcefully hold my hand and speak in a pompous tone.
That was a joke. You're just pouting, aren't you? Come back to me. I'll at least provide food.
How could he say that so confidently after all the pain he had caused me? Moreover, how was this debt-ridden man going to support me? I wish he'd give the jokes a rest. Annoyed, I vigorously shook his hand off. I've had enough. Don't worry about me. I'm earning my own money now.
Don't lie. What can you do? You've been a homemaker all your life.
I'm doing alterations for clothes. I'm well known for my careful and quick work. In fact, as soon as I came to Timothy's house, I mended some of my grandson's torn clothes, and my daughter-in-law was delighted. Seeing this, Timothy suggested, why not turn it into a business and set up an online shop for me? It's amazing how easily young people can do anything these days. I don't know how to use a computer, so Timothy and his wife handle all the orders and shipping.
Is that true?
Yes, it is. I attended a fashion institute when I was young and used to make clothes for Timothy when he was little. That experience has led me to where I am now. Life is strange, isn't it? My ex-husband was stunned, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. I had to hold back laughter at his pathetic state. And just so you know, the house you're currently living in also falls under the division of property. So sell it soon and turn it into cash. At my additional assault, my ex-husband let out a pitiful sound.
Don't be unreasonable. If I sell the house, I'll have nowhere to live.
I don't care. Now, please leave.
No, absolutely not.
Despite his flailing, Timothy forcefully ejected him and he trudged away. Later, he reported to the police that his money had been stolen, but Julie has disappeared and hasn't been caught yet. She must have taken the retirement money and gone far away. The police said she might have been using a false name. After that, my ex-husband sold his house, and I received compensation and property division. Having lost his home and property, he now has a debt of $100,000 and a tough life ahead. I feel as if my sorrowful past is a lie, and I feel so refreshed now. And to top it off, when I was looking for an apartment to live alone and avoid burdening Timothy and his wife, my daughter-in-law asked me to stay with them forever. I am so blessed. Thanks to them, I am living a joyous life, surrounded by my son, his wife, and my grandchild. Next month, we're planning a family vacation and I'm already excited. From now on, I'm going to be very happy.